Hello and welcome to the program. This is Vivica Williams and you're watching Head to Head. One of the reforms that will be most beneficial to Ukraine is decentralization. Today, we want to look at what this means for local communities which will be tasked with implementing European reforms regarding the environment. Joining us in the studio today is Andriy Andrusevych, Senior Policy Analyst at the Resource and Analyst Center, Society and Environment. This center is a think tank that focuses on environmental policy in Ukraine and in the surrounding region. Andriy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Vivica. Hello.
So first of all, tell us a bit about the REC Center.
We strive to become an environmental think tank organization in Ukraine, something which is grown up from our NGO experience that the founders of the center had. But at some point we thought that we want to do more work on finding actually the policy solutions. So that means at the level where the different environmental issues can be tackled at an early stage and more efficiently and more comprehensive.
So your organization helps with writing a lot of the policy, helps with helping Ukraine and the government focus more on environmental policy. And what an issue you're working on right now is how local communities will be affected or have to implement these reforms regarding the environment. And this has to do somewhat with the association agreement.
Correct. Our center is based itself in the region. While our work has a more national, let's say, or international scope, we do very little work at the local level. And this is exactly what probably that is a challenge to the local communities and to us. People outside the capital do not often have enough information about the reforms which are coming, the new roles, responsibilities that these reforms are putting on them, and on the other hand, those reforms in the country, they are shaped, let's say, by the implementation of the association agreement with the EU. Basically, that means they are shaped by the EU environmental legislation. But the issue is whether the local circumstances, the local realities, are taken into account when those reforms are being developed, shaped in Kyiv, in the capital. So we are very happy that we started this initiative to look at the, let's say, the correlation between the reforms, the implementation of the agreement, and at the same time the local communities, their interests and their capacities.
And so what are you finding? What results have you seen so far in this with the local communities, their capacities to implement this, and their understanding of what's required for them?
Well, we are at a very, let's say, just in the middle. In the middle of our initiative to look into these issues, and what we want to do right now is to first do a comprehensive research, which will basically tackle the two parallel processes. One is, as you mentioned, the decentralization and the regional development, and the other is the implementation of the agreement and the reforms in environmental area. So we want to do this research, including we will do 2 polls asking the regional authorities and local, self-governing authorities what they think about these reforms and whether they are involved, whether they expect any new roles, whether they have any capacities to implement those obligations which are already put on them. And on the other hand, we also want to look at the processes which go in parallel. That means the decentralization, the establishment of these new united territorial communities in Ukraine, the regional development, and to see whether these processes take into account the environmental, let's say, responsibilities, the environmental interest, and the environmental problems that the local communities are facing. Our preliminary understanding is that there is very little involvement and information at the local level of what is going on, what to expect in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years. So our preliminary understanding is that all the, let's say, reforms and the implementation of the association agreement with the European Union is, how to say, monopolized by the capital. I'm not saying by the Ministry of Environment, but it's, let's say, it's not only about the authorities, it's also about the expert community, it's about the civil society. So it's what we preliminarily see now, it's all Kyiv-based, capital-based, and that means that the local communities, their authorities, their local organizations, let's say even, they even don't know sometimes what's going on. So our biggest issue here is, again, it's a very preliminary conclusion, that if the capacities of the local communities, especially the local and regional authorities, are not taken into account, that may jeopardize the reform itself.
Mm-hmm.
Let's have an example. If under just recently adopted a new law on environmental impact assessment,
Right.
certain responsibilities to carry out such environmental impact assessments for any planned industrial activity is put on regional authority. The issue is, are those regional authorities ready? Can they actually, do they have a capacity? Do they have a necessary expertise to carry out those functions? Because if they don't, that means the whole reform fails. And that may jeopardize the whole idea of, let's say, getting closer to the EU, etc. So it may give rise to, or some food, let's say, to those Euroscepticists that are here in Ukraine.
So without
we don't want that to happen.
And without the ability to implement this on a local level, these are requirements for the local level to implement environmental reform. So if they're unable to do this, if they don't have the capacity, then in short, it's not possible to truly implement these reforms in Ukraine. Is this the case?
That's our preliminary, that's the risk that we preliminarily see. This is exactly as you described. The reforms are shaped in the capital. They are enforced, the reforms. It could be a new law or an amendment to a water code, for example. But that puts some new responsibilities and functions on local or regional, mostly it's regional authorities. The issue is, if they cannot do that, then that means the reform fails. And that's the risks that we preliminarily see. But again, we are just in the middle of our research on that.
And from your previous experience, because you guys have been doing this work for several years now, what do you see as some of the most effective ways to help local communities and regional governments to be able to get more involved and to take ownership of changes?
Well, yeah, it's a two-way process, right? First, they need much more information on what's going on. I mean, not just generally, but if we have a new waste strategy discussed by the government today, they need to understand, the regional authorities need to be consulted, they need to understand where that strategy starts, where that ends, where they can give any input. That's on one side. On the other side, they should be able to present or communicate the regional problems as they are. Because one thing, how you see a waste problem on waste separation in Lviv, how do you see that problem from Kyiv? And the other perspective is, how do you see that problem as the mayor of the city or as a city council? I mean, Lviv is just a top example recently, but that that is true for any other city in Ukraine. So if the Kyiv shapes that in somewhere for the small cities, for example, a solution could be different than a solution that is for a large city, where you have, let's say, 500,000 residents or 1 million residents. So that's an example that it's a two-way process. I mean, the Kyiv needs to put probably more into awareness raising, into giving information. But the local and regional authorities, they also need to show some sort of, let's say, self-organization. We have, for example, these associations of mayors, of cities. The issue is, are they also, or do they have also the capacity to act as an intermediary between the central government and the regional governments on environmental issues?
Right.
Because right now you see everything is focused on energy efficiency, for example, on just recently I heard something on climate change, but nothing I heard on waste, that there are certain, I never heard that the cities are organizing themselves around Ukraine into associations which would deal with specific environmental issues like waste or air pollution, for example, or noise pollution, which is the second largest environmental problem in the EU, if we speak
which
about
is noise pollution.
Noise pollution.
And do you think the situation in Lviv with the garbage crisis there puts any light on the emphasis on increasing the waste management issue and this environmental consequences?
Can you rephrase it?
Do you see that the issue with there's the waste crisis that's been going on for more than a year in Lviv, and do you see that's putting any light on more actively dealing with waste management and the environmental side effects from this?
No, not exactly, but to me, this waste crisis in Lviv recently just show how vulnerable are the local authorities to environmental problems. I mean, we expect them to have sufficient financial, administrative capacity to deal with the issue. Planning capacity, one of the key issues. Planning capacity, how do you develop a local plan, like a local strategy to deal with the municipal waste, for example, issue. But what we saw, or the conclusion from this crisis is that the local authorities often don't have that capacity, and they need some sort of how to say it? I mean, capacity building, or even support from the central government. Like the new waste, for example, the new waste strategy. It's a draft yet, but this draft, it proposes to create regional municipal waste management facilities. That means that a single local authority will be dependent on that solution. So it's not a solution that a single city can have. Then that means that they need to organize, they need the support from the central government, and only at that point they can have a regional, let's say, waste management plan or incineration plan, whatever. You understand what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
But generally, the crisis in Lviv with the waste was just showing it. To me, it shows that the local authorities, even strong local authorities, as we have one in Lviv, I consider that to be a strong one. In terms of historical background, political power, financial resources, even such local communities may face serious difficulties in tackling what I would call a quite ordinary environmental task. Exactly. It's not simple, but it's ordinary. I mean, it's expected. It's not something unusual, new, like a climate change.
Right, absolutely.
Today, and the adaptation measures, this is something new, unexpected, and we can expect the little capacity there. But the municipal waste issue is quite an ordinary function for a local authority.
And so that gives us a lot of idea of a great example of the level of communication between the local government and the central government, and the need to increase local government capacity. Thank you so much for being with us today, Andriy. Thank you for giving us this insight on where local communities and governments stand.
Thanks so much, Viveka. Now, if I may just say that this initiative is part of a larger one implemented with the support of the European Union called Regions for Reforms. But our project sub-initiative deals with the environmental dimension, which is often overlooked. By the way, you wanted to speak about the East also.
And I think we'll have we're going to have to talk with you again on that, because that's definitely a topic that needs to have its own program. So we'll be calling you back to talk about that.
I'm looking forward to hearing from you on that.
Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Thank you so much.
Today we're talking with Andriy Andrusevych, a senior policy analyst at the Resource and Analyst Center, Society and Environment. Thank you for watching.